9/11 world. He was one of the people who, with me as United States Attorney, helped me to build bridges to the Muslim community, to develop sources, to build trust, and to help that community help us keep our country safe. Sahel was a leader in doing that for American law enforcement. And so I asked him if he'd be willing to give up his practice and become a judge, because I thought he would be a great judge and a great example for children all over our state, and a great story. And he said he would. And do you know the first question he was asked when he sat before the Senate Judiciary Committee in New Jersey? With that background, as his introduction in his speech, the first question was, Mr. Muhammad, could you explain what jihad is?
And that was Governor Christie talking about Judge Muhammad. And we have Janet Levy joining us today. She's an activist, freelance journalist for The American Thinker and a blogger for Women Against Shariah. She's joining us to discuss her latest piece about Bridgegate. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you.
Janet, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me all right?
Hi.
Yes.
Yes. All right. So what do you make of Christie's? He went on from that answer and really used some harsh language. He was asked about his appointment of this judge several years ago, and he tried to turn it around and make it sound like anybody who dare question it is a bigot. That's how I read it.
Yeah, he did. He came to the defense of Sohail Mohammed quite eloquently, and unfortunately it was quite believable. But the truth is that Sohail is on the board of the American Muslim Union, which is co-founded by a former executive of CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, which you probably know is an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation.
The Holy Land Foundation, yeah.
Yeah, the largest terrorism trial in U.S. history, funding Hamas. So he did a good job supporting.
Here's my question for you about Judge Muhammad. Did you see the ruling that he made last month about the woman who was going to be in labor and she wanted to keep the father of the baby out of the room? And the judge actually found that it was a woman's right to decide who was going to be in the delivery room, and a woman had the right to privacy, and he relied on cases like Roe versus Wade. I'm wondering how you reconcile that with this Sharia law idea.
Well, that does go along with Sharia law. That we have instances where Muslim husbands have gone into hospitals, even in emergency situations. They've demanded that the male doctor be removed from the room. And we're talking about life and death situations, so this has happened.
But this case was a little bit different in that the judge said that the male actually didn't have the right to be in the room, that he actually was going to be kept out of the room against his will because that's what the woman wanted. I just feel as though that's a little bit harder to reconcile with this idea that he's for the Sharia law.
Well, that is in accordance with Sharia, that a male not be attendant to a woman's health care. So I'm not sure I'm clear on your question.
Okay, well, no, I mean, on its face, it does appear that it would be for women's rights because it's what the woman wanted. But if you say it's in compliance with Sharia, I see what Heather's getting to. But Heather and I disagree a little bit on Sohail Mohammed. I'm with you, Janet, 100%. And let me, from the beginning, when he made this appointment, I found this story from the Associated Press back on the day that the Fort Dix Six were arrested. The terrorists who were going to invade Fort Dix and they were going to kill as many American soldiers as possible. These were members of the community, cab drivers, pizza delivery guys. And the article is May 9th, 07. And U.S. Attorney Chris Christie is quoted as saying, this is what law enforcement is supposed to do in a post-9/11 era, stay one step ahead of those who are attempting to harm Americans. And in the same article, you had this quote, if these people did something, then they deserve to be punished to the fullest extent of the law, said Sohail Mohammed, a lawyer who represented scores of detainees after the 2001 attacks. But, he said, when the government says Islamic militants, it sends a message to the public that Islam and militancy are synonymous. Here's a guy who denies any connection between radical Islam and terrorism, and I think that speaks to who Sohail Mohammed really is.
Exactly. And he also objected to the show 24 depicting Muslims as terrorists, although 24 didn't discriminate. They targeted many groups as terrorists during their series. But the idea is to keep out of the public mind any connection between Islam and jihad or terrorism. To maintain the fiction,
Gina,
in other words, that Islam is a religion of peace.
But don't you think it's an attempt at bridge building? I mean, I think that you've said yourself that the New Jersey is one of the states next to Michigan, I think, that has the highest population of Muslims. If you're going to have these people in your state, aren't you better off trying to build bridges as opposed to keep people apart?
Well, we have a couple of tenets of Islam that raise grave concerns. One is the doctrine of taqiyya, where it is required of devout Muslims to deceive non-Muslims as to their intent. So you can't necessarily take statements at face value. That's very, very difficult for us in our truth-oriented society to deal with the fact that somebody may be purposely deceiving us.
And you point out in your piece at American Thinker, Janet, great piece, by the way. First of all, Chris Christie once told me when I asked him when the Ground Zero controversy was going on with the mosque, he said, well, it's not my place to say one way or another. That stunk to high heaven to me. And then, you talk about what took place in, I think it was Patterson, or where they raised the Palestinian flag at City Hall. This governor was silent, and he went to bat for another radical Palestinian. Why don't you explain that?
Yeah, well, the organizer for that event, that Palestinian Day, was Kader Abu Asab. And he's actually served jail time for fraud. And he's affiliated with, he's on Christie's Muslim Outreach Committee, which, by the way, is populated by almost all Muslim Brotherhood operatives. So,
and the Muslim Brotherhood, of course.
Abu Asab has a history of telling Muslims in the community not to cooperate with law enforcement as well.
Janet, in that same piece, you talk a lot about Katanani and Christie's support of him as well. What do you know about Rabbi Center, who also supported and served as a character witness in that trial?
I'm not familiar with him at all. I'm sorry. But I do know that Katanani was arrested in Israel, and he's a self-admitted member of Hamas. He came to take over a mosque that was founded by a fundraiser for Hamas, someone who bragged about raising $2 million for the Hamas terrorist group to provide support for families of suicide bombers.
Yeah, I just think that Christie has a lot to answer to when it comes to, again, taking offense or feigning outrage that Sharia law should be a question to that judicial nominee, or his definition of jihad, which has been so distorted by many Muslims, where many Muslims say, and supporters of Islam say, jihad is a good thing. It's a wonderful thing. So I don't think they were out of line. And I think, in my view, Christie's unwillingness to address these issues and calling people names and saying it's crap and it's BS, as he did at that event when he answered that question, really calls into question. And I think, and what do you think, Janet, that he reached out to this community the way he did, and he's done everything he's done the way he's done it because he wanted their support for the gubernatorial election.
Right, he has had their support, and one thing we can't deny: there was a prominent Sharia decision in New Jersey. I write about in the piece in 2009. A judge denied a restraining order to a Muslim woman who was raped by her husband and assaulted based on the Sharia, that's permissible under
right.
Sharia. But basically,
Janet Levy, Janet, got to go. Heartbreak. Appreciate your time. Heather Hansen, great seeing you. Thank you for coming back with the Give Me 5.
Imagine if you had a secret